thank you so much for colleagues to join in this discussion today about how to secure member support modernization initiatives for subnational parliaments. It's my pleasure to be your moderator here today in this very high-level panel discussion with esteemed colleagues and specialists on this topic. We know that the time might not be as convenient for colleagues as we might hope, so this is being recorded, and we're going to share this at the soonest convenience with everyone, so you may watch the recording of this panel discussion. Before we start, I have prepared a few questions for each one of our invited panelists today. But before we start, I'd like to yield the floor to each one of you for you to introduce yourself in 1 minute, for you to say a little bit about your role, the institution you represent. I will start with Valerie. Valerie, would you like to start and introduce yourself?
Sure, thanks, Luis. So I'm Valerie Kyok Lim, Deputy Clerk and Executive Director of Legislative Services at the Legislative Assembly of Ontario, which is one of the subnational parliaments or provinces in Canada. A large part of my role is really working with the Speaker and members in providing procedural advice and support, but I also oversee, as Executive Director, 4 departments or 4 branches at the legislature. Just briefly, one of the branches is procedural services. So as I mentioned before, working a lot with the rules of proceedings, so that's procedure. Broadcast and recording services, so the recording of the video and audio proceedings of the House and committees, and broadcasting and streaming that out into the world is the main role of that branch. House publications and language services also, so that's dealing with transcripts, or we call them Hansard, which is most of the Westminster Parliament call transcripts Hansard as well, but also providing language services, so interpretation from English, French to English, and most recently some Indigenous language that's spoken in Canada as well. And the 4th department or branch that I oversee is Parliamentary Protocol and Public Relations, so that's dealing a lot with our education programs and visitor services in Ontario.
Thank you, Valerie, for your introduction. Tom, would you like to also introduce yourself for the colleagues?
Yes, Lewis, thank you. And I'm looking forward to the participation in this discussion with my fellow panelists. I'm the clerk of the Legislative Assembly for the Australian Capital Territory, which is a small parliament of 25 members. We are one of 8 subnational parliaments existing in Australia. I've held the position of clerk for 21 years, and I've also done a year's secondment to the New South Wales Parliament in Sydney for a year, which is another subnational parliament. And I started my career in the Commonwealth Parliament in the House of Representatives, where I worked for 5 years. So I bring that experience to the discussion. So thank you, Lewis.
Thank you, Tom. Now I'd like to invite you, Casagrande, to introduce yourself for the colleagues. Está no mudo.
Mais uma vez, boa noite. Eu sou Carlos Eduardo Casagrande, servidor de carreira da Assembleia Legislativa do Estado do Espírito Santo, um estado brasileiro. Também servidor em cargo de confiança, exercendo a função de secretário-geral da mesa, que gerencia toda a área legislativa da Assembleia Legislativa. Isso é composta por 6 diretorias, diversas coordenações e supervisões, uma quantidade muito grande de servidores, quase 600 servidores, e gerencia as comissões permanentes e temporárias, comissões temáticas, a parte de arquivo e transcrição de textos, né? Que é a taquigrafia, que é conhecido como taquigrafia, a consultoria temática parlamentar, uma diretoria que cuida só de documentação e informações, guarda de documentos, arquivo, biblioteca, outra diretoria que cuida do processo legislativo como um todo, né? e uma diretoria especializada em redação legislativa. Então, essas diretorias subordinadas à secretaria que eu gerencio compõem a área legislativa da Assembleia Legislativa. Estou lá há 41 anos e na função de secretário-geral há 20 anos e meio.
Thank you, Casagrande, for your introduction. Marcos Aquino, would you like to introduce yourself for the colleagues as well?
Boa noite, pessoal. Luiz, mais uma vez, obrigado pelo convite e participar do evento do Bussolatec. Eu sou o CEO da Agape Consultoria, uma empresa de tecnologia da informação que leva soluções de inovação para o legislativo. A gente tem prestado serviço aqui no Brasil para diversos parlamentos subnacionais, que são as assembleias legislativas, e câmaras municipais, que são parlamentos municipais, de forma que a gente tem contribuído para levar transformação digital e inovação para os parlamentos aqui no Brasil. É um prazer estar aqui com vocês, discutindo um tema tão relevante que é a modernização dos parlamentos.
Thank you, Marcos, for your introduction as well. And without further ado, allow me to bring my first question to you, Tom. Recognizing that legislative procedures and legislative systems are intricate and often fall outside members' daily routine or daily activities, how do you, as the clerk, tailor its need for modernization to secure their support? Meaning, how do you make the modernization of the legislative processes a relevant topic in the members' agenda? And also, how do you create the need to involve them in these discussions in the daily activities of the Assembly?
Thank you, Lewis. I think we all know that modernising parliaments are not the top of the list when it comes to members' plans when they first enter Parliament. But we have a couple of ways here in my legislature that assist in bringing such modernisation to their attention. So once every 4 years, we undertake a comprehensive review of the Assembly standing orders. It's done by way of the Assembly's Procedure Committee, and like every other committee, we advertise that inquiry and invite submissions to the review. And members are well aware of this. They're told of this when they're first elected. And as part of that inquiry, they often suggest possible changes to the clerk because they know that the clerk lodges the major submission to that review. And I think it's fair to say that as a relatively new parliament in Australia, by Australian standards, we're only 35 years old and not the biggest parliament, the members tend to be open to new ideas, which is good. So in addition to the clerk making a major submission, the opposition, the government, the crossbench and the independent members also make submissions, and the wider community and academics are also asked to lodge submissions. But it's not just the Assembly standing orders that's subject to modernisation. The Assembly has 8 standing committees who bring Parliament to the people, and their processes are also subject to modernisation. And to that end, the Speaker convenes a meeting of committee chairs twice a year. And the 8 committee chairs that we have, some are who from the opposition, some are who from the crossbench, and some of them are independents, gather and discuss issues that arise from conducting inquiries into various matters. So this is also an opportunity to reform procedures. And only a couple of weeks ago, that meeting changed the way we deal with witnesses acknowledging that they must abide by and adhere to the requirements of appearing, i.e. they must be honest and answer questions truthfully. I think it's also important that the clerk and other senior officers of the legislature keep abreast of procedural developments in other legislatures, perhaps participating in seminars like this, Lewis. It's often said that every clerk or secretary general has a bottom drawer at their desk when procedural reforms and ideas are stored, just in case a member comes along seeking to change the way the legislature operates. And so resulting from our discussion today, I may well add to that bottom drawer, hearing the ideas that I'm hearing as part of this session. So I think that is the way I tailor in our legislature modernisation to hopefully meet members' priorities.
Thank you, Tom, for your considerations. Valerie, would you like to comment on this topic as well?
Sure, and actually some of Tom's comments about the standing order changes and standing committees really struck with me as well. We don't have quite a formal process of reviewing the standing orders every 4 years, the way they have in Tom's jurisdiction, but we do have a procedures committee as well, standing committee on procedure and House Affairs, that could undertake reviews at any point of the standing orders and changing our processes. So it's interesting that we didn't have changes to the standing orders for a while. I think we had maybe 2009, and then more recently, in around 2018, 2019, we've seen a lot more changes to the standing order and more often. So in the past, it will take quite a bit of time or review, and maybe members didn't or more reluctant to make changes. But more recently, there's more appetite to update and change the rules as well. And the bottom drawer is very interesting because there's usually, whether it's a committee or whether the House will make changes to these rules, there's consultation with clerks and senior officers procedurally. Then we may have suggestions as well of some tweaks that might be appropriate to the procedure to help modernize our process in the legislature. I will say a couple of ideas that I had with this question is that we kind of balance being reactive to things that happen and also being proactive in engaging members and making suggestions and modernizing. So an example that many can relate to is when the COVID-19 pandemic hit and we had to really make some changes to our service delivery. And one example is having digital or more electronic means of sharing information to members. Or we actually did have hybrid committee meetings when we didn't have that before, and actually not since we came out of the pandemic. When I say hybrid, meaning MPPs could join electronically, but now we're back to all MPPs, that's members of provincial parliament, participating in person. So some of the modernization came out of reacting to what's happening in the world, or we're required to react and to change our process. Being proactive, it's looking at trends around us in general. So sometimes participating in panels like this or conferences and seeing what other parliaments may be doing, and responding to those trends to say, hey, that's something that we can bring to our legislature. So it's then engaging with members if that's an appropriate change that can happen here, or is there interest or appetite for members to bring that change in Ontario as well.
Thank you, Valerie, for your comments on this question as well. Casagrande, would you like to comment on this?
Sim. No Espírito Santo, a gente conta com também um comitê de transparência, que ele também atua nessa área de tecnologia e de evolução dos sistemas, né? Discutindo temas, dando dicas. Nós temos uma empresa contratada, que é a Agape Consultoria, e ela é terceirizada, ela também é propositiva em relação às modernizações dos sistemas, às atualizações de sistema, inclusive com inteligência artificial agora. E eu sempre conto, principalmente, nós temos uma vantagem agora na atual legislatura da Assembleia do Espírito Santo. A composição parlamentar, ela é composta de 1/3 ou um pouco mais de parlamentares com menos de 40 anos de idade, ou seja, estão bem inseridos nesse mundo tecnológico atual. E, além disso, eles requerem essa tecnologia, esses deputados mais novos em idade, mas os de meia idade e os mais idosos, a gente conta com a participação dos assessores principais deles para colaborarem com a gente e a gente conseguir implantar as modernizações dos sistemas que são extremamente necessárias, porque Senão, você fica com a tecnologia atrasada e você atrasa todo um processo envolvido nisso, né? Processo de tramitação legislativa. Então, assim, não está difícil na Assembleia do Espírito Santo hoje, tá? No passado, nós já tivemos dificuldades de convencer parlamentares a aderirem à tecnologia. Mas hoje, com essa bancada um pouco mais jovem, com a assessoria também muito jovem, assessoria parlamentar, a gente tem, além dos nossos comitês internos, das nossas diretorias que atuam nessa área, a gente tem conseguido a implantação com maior facilidade e a adesão dos parlamentares e a aceitação dessas atualizações de tecnologia.
Thank you, Casagrande, for your comments. Marcos Aquino, would you like to share your thoughts on this?
Claro, perfeitamente. Casagrande tocou num ponto muito relevante, que a gente percebe que a cada nova eleição, a cada nova legislatura, de 4 em 4 anos, que ocorre aqui no Brasil, a gente verifica que tem mudado o perfil dos parlamentares, né, dos membros do parlamento. E cada vez mais esses membros vêm com uma pegada tecnológica, eles vêm já com um DNA, né, da tecnologia. Isso acaba facilitando o entendimento, e aí eu vou dar a experiência enquanto ágape, de como a gente consegue fazer com que o parlamentar, o membro de um parlamento, quando a gente oferece as nossas soluções, eles comprem a ideia da inovação. A gente tenta passar para eles o benefício que uma evolução tecnológica no parlamento traz para o próprio exercício do mandato dele. Então, a gente enaltece a questão da transparência, a gente enaltece a questão da simplificação de procedimentos, eficiência, acessibilidade, e a gente leva a mensagem de que essas tecnologias podem fazer com que o parlamentar, o gestor, né, os representantes da Casa do Povo passem para a população que eles estão antenados com a tecnologia e eles conseguem utilizar a tecnologia para produzir leis, apresentar projetos e, consequentemente, se aprovado, leis com uma qualidade melhor, ou seja, leis que realmente atendam ao anseio da população. Então, o nosso apelo junto ao parlamento e aos parlamentares é de passar a mensagem dos benefícios que a tecnologia pode trazer para o mandato, a execução do mandato, para que ele possa fortalecer o mandato, ampliar sua legitimidade e aumentar a presença e a conexão dele com o cidadão. Essa, então, tem sido a nossa estratégia enquanto empresa.
Thank you, Marcos, for your comments as well. I'd like to bring my second question to you, Valerie. Once the initial buy-in is secure, members often worry about the costs and the disruption that a particular project may cause in the legislative process. In your view, what performance metrics or concrete examples can you present to illustrate the tangible benefits of a modernization proposal for the members, for example? And how do you align those data points with their specific legislative and political objectives?
Yeah, it's definitely a cost, and especially if we've requested, let's say, funding for certain projects, or in general that we are putting existing funding to certain initiatives that we want to be able to defend the use of that in the product. So I would say in terms of technology, I know our information services, tech services do work on having metrics in terms of hits on websites, let's say, or time, like if we introduce a new product and we say it's going to be faster, how much faster, right? So what benefit is it bringing? And I would say even now, as we're sort of starting from the beginning, that if we're going to introduce a project and a proposal, to set goals and make sure we're clear on what the goals are and what we're hitting, and then so we have benchmarks to say, did we hit those goals, and what are the benefits? So I would say we're relatively a bit early in some of our modernization efforts, like especially the past few years, we're just seeing more exponential, growth in terms of especially in terms of technology. Like we have more like our database systems that we're introducing, and all of those things. So actually, we even fairly recently have a Chief Information Technology Officer. I think he's on the webinar. I'm putting him on the spot. But so in terms of that, just to sort of spearhead the projects and making sure that we have metrics in terms of, are we hitting the goals that we say, to be able to present that data to members to say, hey, we said we will create this database. It's supposed to make production of Hansard faster. How much faster? And then we want to be able to show those numbers to them. So, but I think when we talked movies before, that modernization is not all technology. So there may be other things like, using videos more to communicate with people and kind of get the word out about what Parliament is. So even those initiatives to make sure, like, how much viewership do we have? Having social media now for Parliament. Are we getting followers? Are we getting that, if have programs, are we getting visitors through those social media posts? So just tracking those things so that we know when we make the effort in those programs, is it, for lack of a better word, worth the money? Are we getting value for money in those initiatives?
Thank you, Valerie, for your comments. Just before I yield the floor to Tom, just to recognize Roberto Eberhard, the CIO from the Ontario Legislative Assembly. He was with us last month here in Brazil, presenting your amazing efforts from the Ontario Legislative Assembly. And just to briefly comment on what you said, Valerie, I think it's absolutely important, this final point when you mentioned it's not about just the technology per se. Usually we say that for parliaments to keep the modernization process as something simple and within the capacities of the institution. So sometimes the most innovative thing is to do the simplest thing, not maybe to create a super complex technology or super complex procedure that will hinder everyone's work, but try to find a way that would be intuitive for everyone to move forward.
Right.
Tom, would you like to get on with that topic as well?
Yes, thank you, Lewis. So the ACT is very active members of the Commonwealth Parliamentary Association, and I know Valerie is in that association as well. And the ACT Legislative Assembly was the first legislature to benchmark ourselves against the CPA benchmarks. We did it once in 2007, and again when they revised the benchmarks in 2019. And as part of that benchmark process and assessment, we noted that there were a number of shortfalls. So there were 81 benchmarks, and we only met about 70 of those benchmarks. And members were alerted to this shortfall, and they were very keen to see if we can address some of those shortfalls. So one of the shortfalls was that we didn't automatically refer bills to parliamentary committees before they were enacted into law. And it took some time for us to implement that change. Governments were worried about it because the extra time it would take to pass a bill, and the non-government were worried about the extra work and the time it would take to work it through a committee process and examine the bills. But following a review of the standing orders, it was agreed to change the standing orders to enable bills to be automatically referred to committees, with committees having the option of whether it wanted to undertake a full inquiry into it or not. And it's worth noting that in some contentious bill inquiries, the government is very open to what a committee might recommend, perhaps because we're a small jurisdiction of 485,000 residents and that we have limited resources. Another change that we made to reflect legislative and political objectives was to enhance our petitioning procedure. And there were two main changes. One was to allow for e-petitions, and recognising the comments of Carlos that a lot of our members are younger, they were keen to make sure that the citizens of the ACT could interact electronically with the Assembly and not just simply use paper petitions. So we engaged the services of a company similar to Agate, and we now have e-petitions which are presented, but we also have paper petitions. Another change that we made to the petitions process was that petitions were often lodged, but nothing further happened. And that left petitioners frustrated because they thought that their concerns were not being taken seriously. And following a member's attendance at a conference in the United Kingdom, where he noted that if you got a petition lodged with a certain number of signatories, you got a debate on the floor of the House, he sought my assistance in drafting a standing order that would require petitions with more than 500 signatures to be automatically referred to committees. So it was initially a fear that this too would disrupt the operation of committees, but in both cases, these fears were not realised, and committees took a pragmatic approach to the new referrals and only inquired into those bills or petitions that warranted further examination. So roughly about 10% of our petitions that are referred are inquired into, and roughly about 28% of our bills that are required, that are referred are inquired into. So this has had the result of a better legislation. Many committees recommend amendments to improve the bill, and it also, for petitions, it showed that the Assembly was listening to constituents' concerns. So they're just two examples of how we've structured our procedures here in the Assembly.
Thank you, Tom. It's a very good example. Maybe in a future occasion we can discuss about participation in the legislative process. It's a topic very close to my heart. At least here in Brazil, we have a similar system. However, it's a larger threshold of signatures. I think it's 20,000 here for the Senate. It's called the e-citizenship program. But we saw that, similar to what you mentioned, the feedback from the members were very positive. Because even those ideas that were not used up front, some members endorsed those ideas and submitted those ideas themselves. So it's an absolutely very interesting case that you mentioned as a modernization example, so, which I completely agree. I'd like to invite Marcos Aquino. Marcos, to share your thoughts on this question as well.
Luiz, a gente costuma adotar uma abordagem baseada em evidências para ilustrar os benefícios que a inovação, que a modernização trazem para o legislativo. Então, por exemplo, uma abordagem bem tangível que a gente poderia ilustrar, que a gente sempre utiliza, é a redução do tempo de tramitação no processo de elaboração de leis. A gente entende que, aplicando isso baseado em clientes, em parlamentos que utilizam uma ferramenta de processo eletrônico, por exemplo, para a produção de leis, a gente consegue chegar aí até 60% de redução do tempo nas etapas que não são regimentais, naquelas etapas que são meramente burocráticas. Então, a gente consegue levar e trazer para o parlamentar uma evidência de que, ao utilizar plataformas digitais, a gente consegue reduzir o tempo de tramitação. A gente também não pode negar a questão do custo de você ter um processo analógico, um processo utilizando papel. E aí a gente pode pontuar que em determinados tipos de processo a economia chega aí até 70%. E aí a gente não está falando só de redução de custo simplesmente com papel, com toner, com capa de processo, mas do tempo do servidor, né? O tempo que ele dispõe para executar uma tarefa que, através de uma plataforma digital, ele pode executar a mesma tarefa em lote, por exemplo. Então, a gente sempre busca essa abordagem baseada em evidências. Mas, assim, para a gente, o mais importante é claro que você reduzir, aumentar a eficiência é muito bom, você fazer economia é muito bom, mas o principal ganho é a transparência e o engajamento da sociedade com o parlamento. Então, a gente entende que que a transparência que ferramentas de modernização do legislativo trazem e a possibilidade de engajamento cidadão com o parlamento, seja para a participação popular, apresentando sugestões de projetos, seja interagindo pontualmente na tramitação de uma determinada proposição. Esses, sim, esses são, na minha opinião, os principais benefícios e que servem como convencimento para os parlamentares em investir em ferramentas de modernização.
Thank you, Marcos. I completely agree with what you just mentioned. We usually, when we talk about modernization in parliaments and national legislatures, we share 3 different verticals, being the first one efficiency, the second one openness, where participation and transparency would be included, and the third one, which is the resilience of the legislative process in case of an emergency or any situation that the members wouldn't be able to meet in person. So I completely agree about openness, transparency being a top priority for the members to convince about the importance of a modernization effort. Casagrande, would you like to share your thoughts on this question as well?
Sim, sim, claro. Eu quero trazer um dado inusitado aqui. O Estado do Espírito Santo, assim como o Brasil, ele é um grande produtor de legislação. Eu não vou dizer que, infelizmente, mas eu vou dizer que, com a tecnologia, essa produção poderia ser bem menor. E ela está sendo. A Assembleia Legislativa foi a primeira no Brasil, dos 27 estados federados, a tomar a iniciativa de consolidar legislação, que é uma boa iniciativa. E essa consolidação contou muito com tecnologia e com o sistema que tem rodando na Assembleia hoje. Além disso, as outras vantagens, sempre que a gente atualiza o sistema, promove novas tecnologias, a gente traz novas ferramentas para colocar à disposição dos parlamentares, e eles sentem as facilidades que essas ferramentas trazem. E especialmente a assessoria, na hora, desde o protocolo de uma proposição e durante o fluxo dela também. Não quer dizer que a tecnologia trazida tem que acelerar demais o processo legislativo, o fluxo legislativo. Senão você retira muito a democracia do processo legislativo, que é a possibilidade de participação de todos nele, na produção legislativa. Então, não é a celeridade, é a celeridade inconsequente. É uma celeridade para exatamente o que o Marcos Aquino falou, aquela parte burocrática ser adiantada, não o debate parlamentar em cima de uma proposição. Esse é necessário e é fundamental para que um país democrático consiga produzir legislação de interesse da sociedade como um todo. Então, diante das vantagens que a gente apresenta em relação à otimização, agilidade, qualidade da legislação, por exemplo, existe até hoje, eu não sei se no mundo todo, mas eu sinto no parlamento que volta e meia a gente encontra proposições similares, que poderiam não estar tramitando juntas e nem uma quantidade de proposições tratando do mesmo tema ou tema correlato. Então, a tecnologia tem feito cada vez mais a modernização dentro da Assembleia do Espírito Santo, com que a gente permita que os deputados evitem apresentar proposições cuja legislação já exista ou tenha outra proposição de um colega ou uma colega parlamentar já tramitando. Com essas vantagens que a gente vai apresentando para eles, o custo passa a ser quase irrelevante. Ainda mais que a Assembleia do Espírito Santo tem outro título. A Assembleia, eu vou falar para vocês aqui, que eu tenho que vender meu peixe, eu tenho que promover a Assembleia. Ela é a mais em um monte de situações, em um monte de quesitos, ela é primeiro lugar. Num deles é a economia por parlamentar, pela quantidade de parlamentares que ela tem, que são 30. O tamanho da população do Espírito Santo, que são 4 milhões e poucos habitantes, comparado com os demais 26 parlamentos estaduais, a Assembleia é uma das mais econômicas do Brasil, e a gente se vangloria disso. Mas a Assembleia também, o Estado do Espírito Santo está muito bem equilibrado economicamente, ele progrediu bastante nisso, de uns 15 anos para cá, principalmente. Então, assim, não é que tem que se gastar desnecessariamente, porque o primeiro quesito dessa pergunta, né, a primeira parte desse quesito, melhor dizendo, é o custo, que poderia inibir os parlamentares a quererem modernizar. Mas não, com as vantagens apresentadas, o custo passa a ficar em segundo plano.
Thank you, Casagrande, for your comments. I couldn't agree more with your point that technology shouldn't make the legislative process faster, but it should make bureaucratic processes more responsive and to make them faster, but not the political activity per se. As I usually say, as a political scientist, building consensus takes time and takes a lot of energy. So it will not be a new artificial intelligence tool that will make that faster. And honestly, I don't even think that would be reasonable. But it can make, for example, provide the transcripts in a faster manner. It can provide a comparison between similar bills in a faster manner. It can provide support for the administrative tasks in a faster manner, but not necessarily the political activity per se. I completely agree with you on that point. And Marcos, I'd like to bring my next question to you, if you allow me. That modernization initiatives in parliaments and subnational legislatures, they can lose the momentum once they are underway. And in your view, what governance structures or incentive mechanisms do you establish to maintain members engaged and ensure the proposal remains a priority throughout the implementation? What is your view on that, Marcos?
Luiz, eu penso que a questão do planejamento estratégico da casa e, né, do parlamento, com ações claras e bem definidas de onde a gente está, né, e para onde a gente quer seguir. Então, as regras elas têm que ser claras, não só para a mesa diretora, que aqui no Brasil corresponde ao grupo de deputados que fazem a gestão da Casa Legislativa, do Parlamento, mas que esteja clara para todos os membros do Parlamento. E essas regras, assim, o que o Parlamento planejou e deseja fazer, precisa estar nesse documento, né, que a gente está chamando de planejamento estratégico, e ele precisa ser constantemente atualizado, porque tecnologia ela evolui muito rápido. Então, se a gente a inteligência artificial, em que pese, né, já tem algumas décadas que ela existe, mas a grande virada foi a IA generativa. Então, a gente precisa rever, há 3 anos atrás, a direção dos parlamentos no que se referia à modernização era uma. Com a IA generativa, ela mudou totalmente o foco. E a gente entende que essas ações, o planejamento precisa ser revisto, mas ele, por outro lado, ele precisa estar claro e que a evolução do que está sendo entregue precisa, da mesma forma, estar transparente para os membros e para os servidores das casas legislativas. O Casagrande pode falar melhor, mas a Assembleia do Espírito Santo está apresentando para a mesa diretora e revendo o seu planejamento estratégico para trazer para entrega no período de 1 ano ações de IA, projetos de IA para modernizar todo o processo legislativo. Então, a gente entende que as regras têm que estar claras, né? O planejamento, o planejamento de onde o parlamento está e para onde ele vai seguir, ele tem que estar claro. Esses indicadores precisam também ser claros e, por fim, na minha opinião, eles sempre precisam ser revistos para que eles estejam aderentes ao que os parlamentos, o que se tem de novo em termos de tecnologia e o que se tem feito de diferente em outros parlamentos. E aí, Luiz, este é um momento muito bacana e eu queria te parabenizar pelo trabalho que você faz através do Bússola Tech, que é conectar parlamentos para que experiências sejam trocadas, para que a gente possa rever e garantir que os nossos parlamentares das nossas casas legislativas sempre estejam empenhados para manter o apoio às ações de inovação que são propostas.
Thank you, Marcos. Muito obrigado. I'd like to invite now Casagrande to share your thoughts. Casagrande?
Pois não. Na mesma linha que o Marcos Aquino trouxe, a gente, além de procurar escutar só o que a empresa que dá manutenção no nosso sistema e que criou, e os próprios assessores parlamentares interagindo com a gente em relação ao funcionamento do sistema legislativo, e a gente está sempre atualizando eles em encontros para que eles fiquem bem cientes do que ocorrerá de mudança. Eu, assim como outras categorias da casa têm, os secretários-gerais da mesa do Brasil inteiro, dos 27 estados, tem um comitê permanente de debates em relação ao funcionamento e à modernização do parlamento. Um debate só modernização, debate diversos outros temas, mas do atual que está sendo discutido neste ano no comitê permanente dos secretários-gerais da mesa do Brasil, eu faço parte dele, é lógico. O próximo encontro, inclusive, é dia 13, agora em Sergipe, tá? É uma sexta-feira que vem. A gente vai discutir também modernização, inteligência artificial no parlamento. E isso, o que a gente faz? Eu pego o grupo todo de diretores e coordenadores da área da qual eu gerencio, né? E eu passo para eles o que a empresa trouxe, no caso a Agape Consultoria e o comitê interno da Assembleia decidiu, e eles começam a divulgar para os assessores parlamentares, para as comissões, e esses assessores parlamentares começam a divulgar para os deputados que haverão mudanças para melhorar, melhor dizendo, melhorar o sistema interno de produção legislativa, de processo legislativo. Não é difícil convencer, é aquilo que eu falei no início, porque tem deputados jovens da Assembleia e eles não querem retroceder jamais, eles querem mais facilidade. Então, assim, a gente consegue continuar esse engajamento. Só o que não pode falhar é que o Aquino falou, é você dar bastante ciência do que está para ser mudado, que está para ser implantado os usuários finais do sistema, né? Os usuários finalísticos do sistema. Mas tem dado certo da Assembleia dessa forma. A gente antecipa, faz reuniões, faz encontros com os assessores parlamentares, especialmente a Secretaria-Geral da Mesa, da qual eu gerencio. Eu reúno, inclusive peço o plenário emprestado, o plenário da Assembleia emprestado, reúno os assessores lá e trago as modernidades depois que elas estão consolidadas junto à equipe técnica e que entrarão em funcionamento.
Thank you, Casagrande, for your comment. Valerie, would you like to comment on this question as well?
Sure, thanks, Luis. And I've heard a lot of just interesting points that we're kind of dealing with as well in terms of planning something. I think Marcos has said strategic plan or planning long term, so that there's kind of it's not, I think this might relate more to even to the last question. It's not project by project, but a long-term path of what modernization may look like. But I think to engage members, there really should be a focus on the member experience, and that a lot of this, while we as Assembly staff who are the constant there are the ones here, but really a lot of this is for members. It's their parliament. They're the ones who are really using either the services. They're the ones who are engaging with the rules of the House. So for a member experience, with that as a priority, we have to constantly engage and ask the question, like, what do members want to see? What do we do to make their role easier as a parliamentarian? I think someone had mentioned that when members get elected, legislature or the House may be kind of the least of their knowledge because they come from different backgrounds. They go out and campaign and get elected, but to come into the legislature and use our services and go into the House and propose legislation and debate, that's really for a new member maybe foreign. So what can we put in place to make that role not only easier but successful as well? So I think it's just maintaining a lot of engagement with members to see what is it that they'd like to see, so that we can put that in our plans as well. I mentioned members, but I think one thing for our parliament too is engaging with some of the staff, not Assembly staff, but staff members of caucuses who are kind of constant as well. So sometimes they stay for a longer period than members who may be elected or re-elected. So I say constant because sometimes members may be in Parliament for a certain term and then they leave, but we need some sort of connection with, okay, for your caucus, what is the desired for your group, for this party and that party, to gather information. So I think for us, we're trying to find ways to engage members either as with them individually, or how can we get ideas from them as a group. To be able to move forward with plans that we have for the legislature. And also when we mentioned here maintaining it a priority, like I said, because members have many different things that their attention is pulled to. Sometimes when we're trying to find even engaging surveys or anything like that about the services that we have, it's not easy to get answers or to get feedback. So I'll actually put that out there as a work in progress for us in trying to see what members are looking for, and even to get feedback if they're satisfied or happy with maybe some of the systems that we have or the process that we have in the legislature. So I'll leave it at that for now.
Thank you, Valerie, for your comments. Tom, would you like to share your thoughts on this question as well?
Yes, thank you, Lewis, and I agree with all my fellow panelists with all their comments. They're very engaging. I recognise that reviewing standing orders and implementing new IT projects can take some time. And so recognising this, we've taken some steps to try and ensure that members remain engaged and don't lose focus. So for the review of the 4 yearly review of standing orders, which I mentioned earlier, it's important to schedule such reviews well away from election times so that members stay focused and they don't have to worry about a looming election. And so for this reason, the review is deliberately scheduled in the second year of a 4-year term. And so it has the added advantages that at this stage of a parliamentary term, newer members will have gained a good grasp of the standing orders while still having a fresh perspective as a new member. So that engages the process as well and keeps them focused. Another way that we keep members' engagement is when we look at IT projects that we roll out. So recently we've rolled out a modernisation project with relation to our questions on notice portal. And we rolled it out over a period of 2 years, but because it took quite some time and members were a little bit frustrated about it, we trialled it in selected members' offices once we got to a certain stage. And that enabled members and their staff to see the advantages as soon as the project was being rolled out and remain engaged in it. Another example that we've adopted is that we have a new opposition speaker who's keen to reform one of our question time procedures. And so as part of that consideration, we've looked at another Parliament's question time, and we like what the standing order is in that particular Parliament. And to assist the committee to decide whether to adopt it, because of video technology, we're able to show them videos of that Parliament's question time and how it operates in real vision. And that has aided the committee in sort of its consideration. So you make use of technology wherever possible to sort of keep members engaged and focus on the modernisation project. And lastly, we have embedded in our practices an independent review of the Parliament as applied to the Latimer House principles. So the Latimer House principles were endorsed at a Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting in Nigeria in 2003. And it has as an objective an effective framework for governments, parliaments and judiciaries, and it reflects the Commonwealth fundamental values. So the Speaker engages an independent consultant to review the three arms of government by talking to members, by talking to the Chief Justice, by talking to the First Minister, and seeing how the Parliament is rating and the three branches are rating against those principles. And a report is prepared and presented to the Parliament with recommendations for possible reform. So that's another way to keep ensuring that members are engaged in any modernisation proposals that emanate from that particular review.
Thank you, Tom, for your comments as well. I'll bring my last question to you, Casagrande. Parliamentary modernization, as we have been discussing, it's a continuous effort rather than a one-off project. So my question to you, very objectively, what mechanisms have you found essential to institutionalize these efforts, ensuring that they stay aligned with the members' evolving priorities and they endure throughout the political shifts that sometimes, well, maybe more than sometimes, maybe oftentimes happen in many parliaments? How do you ensure this sense of continuity regarding the modernization of the parliament? Casagrande?
Eu acho que retroceder em tecnologia já é muito difícil para quem quer fazer isso. Então fica mais fácil o nosso trabalho. No Brasil, as eleições parlamentares acontecerão agora, em 2026, final de 2026, e um mandato novo parlamentar começa no início de 2027, em 1º de fevereiro de 2027. No Espírito Santo, o parlamento não altera mais do que nos últimos anos, nas últimas eleições, não tem alterado mais do que 50%, por exemplo. A última vez se reelegeram 17, 18, de 30 parlamentares, quer dizer, são quase 2/3. Mesmo que saiam agora, saia a metade do parlamento agora, eu estou falando da continuidade da modernização, tá? E manutenção do sistema. Novos parlamentares virão, mas já pegarão o sistema funcionando, atualizado e moderno, porque a gente está fazendo isso a cada tempo, a cada período na Assembleia. Então, quem entra não questiona normalmente. Quem questiona é quem já está lá dentro, quando teve uma alteração durante o mandato dele. Isso eu estou falando por experiência de 40 anos, 41 agora na Assembleia, tá? O Estado do Espírito Santo tem outra vantagem. Como a Assembleia do Espírito Santo é a mais transparente, tem o prêmio de mais transparente do Brasil, e foi a primeira a modernizar, tornar o parlamento totalmente digital, foi a primeira Assembleia das 27, você imagina um novo presidente, uma nova mesa diretora entrando e retrocedendo nisso. Voltar ao processo analógico, nem pensar. Eles vão querer continuar mostrando números positivos e prêmios, porque a Assembleia ganha muito prêmio em relação a menor gasto, a maior transparência, modernidade. A Assembleia sempre foi vanguardista nisso, sempre saiu na vanguarda. Então, eu imagino que vai ser muito mais fácil, com um novo mandato, continuar. O atual presidente da Assembleia, Ele foi vice-presidente de 2015 até 2022, o atual presidente. E foi ele que deu o principal apoio como vice-presidente da casa para a modernização atual da casa. Ele é o padrinho desse projeto. E ele está deixando um legado de muito equilíbrio no parlamento. Apesar do parlamento nacional brasileiro ser um pouco conturbado lá entre direita, esquerda, governo e oposição, no Espírito Santo, ele é muito essa relação é muito estável. Então, eu não vejo como secretário-geral da mesa, se continuar sendo, já estou há 20 anos e pouco, se eu continuar sendo, eu não vislumbro dificuldade para a gente manter a continuidade da evolução tecnológica e da modernização dos nossos sistemas e nossos fluxos. E oferta de serviços novos, de melhoria nos serviços e qualidade para os parlamentares. Não vejo problema.
Thank you, Casagrande. Marcos, would you like to comment on this topic as well?
Claro. Eu penso que um mecanismo para garantir a continuidade e, né, da evolução tecnológica, para que não haja o retrocesso, é normatizar a utilização da tecnologia no parlamento. Então, normas internas lá na Assembleia do Espírito Santo e em outros parlamentos que a gente implantou soluções tecnológicas, a gente sempre sugere que no regimento interno da casa conste a utilização de mecanismos de tecnologia da informação. Então, o primeiro ponto, a normatização, que a gente entende que garante aí a continuidade e não deixa que mudanças políticas interfiram no processo de modernização. Segundo, um plano de capacitação contínua para que os novos membros, os novos assessores, servidores possam entender como funciona a tecnologia, como o parlamento tem conduzido as ações de modernização. E um ponto que eu falei anteriormente é sempre estar observando as novas tendências do que o mercado tem feito, e aí ressalto novamente, Luiz, a importância da sua atuação e do que o Bussolatec faz em promover e identificar as boas práticas e inovações, em especial de inteligência artificial, nos legislativos. Eu posso dar aqui o meu testemunho de que, a partir do último evento que a gente participou, Luiz, a gente trouxe vários insights e a gente já desenhou um projeto na Agape de aplicação de inteligência artificial para o legislativo, fruto do que a gente viu no evento em Washington, com experiências do Parlamento do Chile e de outros parlamentos, não só aqui no Brasil, mas também de fora, que permitem que a gente revise sempre como aplicar de forma mais assertiva a tecnologia dentro dos parlamentos.
Thank you, Marcos, for your comments, your generous and kind words. I'd like to now invite Tom for you to share your comments, Tom. Would you like to share your thoughts on this question as well?
Thank you, Lewis. And like Carlos, I have seen over my almost 40-year career working for 3 parliaments, I've seen many political shifts and know that the electoral pendulum swings over time. And I think it's important that parliamentary officers recalibrate to a certain extent after each election and note the composition of the new parliament. I.e., is it a majority parliament? Is it a minority parliament? Is it a coalition of parties? Are there a lot of new members that have been elected, younger members? Are there a lot of female members elected? Because we have, in our legislature, we have 56% of the parliament is women. So again, you need to calibrate and adjust your parliaments and make changes and procedural changes when they're required. I think another important element, particularly for clerks or secretary generals, is that with a change of speaker, you need to find out what that speaker intends to do during their term and be alive to any possible changes that they wish to make. as I previously indicated, at the last election in October, a new opposition member was elected as Speaker, something not quite very usual in most Westminster parliaments, and certainly it's not the first one in the ACT. And that has thrown both new opportunities, but also challenges, and it's resulted in changes in the way we operate. As I indicated before, when we benchmarked ourselves against the CPA benchmarks, we found that we met 70 or so of the 81, but that exercise gave us a very clear goal that regardless of political shifts, enable us to stay aligned with modernising our legislature, regardless of the composition. So the mechanisms that I found useful that is embedded in modernising is the 4-yearly annual review of standing orders, the review of the Lanham House principles, and the continual utilisation of that Clark's bottom drawer that can be useful in making parliamentary modernisation a continuous journey rather than a one-off project for our parliament.
Thank you, Tom, for your comments about this topic. Valerie, would you like to share your thoughts on this question as well?
For sure, yeah. I'm hearing a lot of very interesting things. Actually, that 4-year review, Tom, is kind of, it sounds like it's coming in, say, very handy for your parliament. So while we don't have a formal one, what you said about each, so in Ontario, we have a fixed election, and every 4 years, an election could be called a little bit earlier, which happened recently. But a change in parliament is a good time for sure to look at the makeup of the composition. Like Tom said, we had a 2-party system for 8 years, and now we're back to a 3-party parliament, which we had long before that. So even the shifts in those makeups, and we actually had elected our first female speaker in Ontario. So that with it come changes, even talking about the uniform that we wear in the House, and maybe changes to that. So responding to changes and evolving needs that may happen. So I know in last Parliament also we had a member who had accessibility needs, someone who was in a wheelchair in the House. So responding to those, it may be, as I talked about in the beginning, reactive, depending on the kind of parliament that we have. But also for ourselves, having that long-term plan, just about within the staff to say, where are we taking our parliament? Do we want to be more digital? Do we want to focus more on improve our technology and the way we provide our service? So kind of balancing long-term plans and having roots, so that no matter which party is in power or what the makeup is, we can kind of continue moving towards a certain direction. But of course, we have to respond depending on who's in, which members do we have in our House. But it's also thinking about future-proof, if that makes sense, whether it's technology or when clerks are consulted about, let's say, standing order changes. Sometimes we do have to look at, what are you proposing? It works here, but what if our parliament has 4 parties? How will that work with this procedure? So kind of looking at long-term, looking a little bit ahead as much as we can. Sometimes it's hard to predict what may come, but as much as possible, looking ahead and future-proofing plans, whether it's modernizing our rules in the House or technology that we have. But of course, responding to the members, the actual members that we have in the House and their needs.
Thank you, Valerie, for your comments. And thank you all of you for your participation today. We are reaching the end of our panel. But before we go, I'd like to yield the floor back to each one of you. If you have any final message, if you wish to say your farewells. Valerie, allow me to start with you. If you have any final messages for colleagues in today's panel.
Sure. I just want to thank you, Louise, and of course my fellow panelists here for just an interesting, conversation that we have this evening, at least for me, where I am. And the insights, it's interesting that no matter where we are in the world, parliaments have a lot in common. A lot of the challenges that we have, trying to uphold rules, but also engaging in like services that we provide, but also working with elected members, elected politicians. So I always appreciate opportunities like this where we can exchange ideas, and perhaps we may contact each other offline for more of the ideas that were laid upon here. So I appreciate this opportunity. Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you, Valerie. Thank you for coming today and sharing your thoughts. Tom, would you like to share your final message with colleagues as well?
Yes, thank you, Lewis. And I'd like to also thank the fellow panelists. And I want to echo Marcus's comment about you, Lewis, about the wonderful role you do in bringing parliaments across the world together and hearing their experience. I think it's a wonderful thing to be able to do that. And I very much appreciate being a part of that. My only final comment would be that, and sorry, I should apologise for calling clerks not clerks, but that's just the pronunciation in Australia for that term. And my final comment is that parliamentary office should preserve important traditions. That's always important, but we should be always open to worthwhile change. And I think seminars like this expose us to those possible worthwhile changes. So again, thank you very much for being a part of this seminar.
Thank you so much, Tom, for your participation and for your kind words as well. It's a pleasure to have welcomed you here today. Casagrande, would you like to say your final message as well?
Da mesma forma que o Tom, a Valerie, eu gostaria de agradecer a participação. Acho importantíssimo esse debate para o futuro dos parlamentos, né? E dizer a mensagem é que, independente do sistema de governo e da composição e dos costumes locais de cada nação, cada estado, a tecnologia vai continuar avançando e existindo, e nós temos que estar preparados e engajados para que isso não pare. Para a melhoria dos parlamentos, é lógico, né? E muito obrigado.
Thank you, Casagrande, for your participation today. Marcos, I'd like to invite you to share your final message as well. Please feel free to use the floor.
Obrigado, Luiz, mais uma vez pelo convite. Queria falar da satisfação de estar aqui com vocês, Tom, Valerie, meu amigo Casagrande, meu conterrâneo do Espírito Santo. E, Luiz, o desafio é constante, levar inovação para os legislativos. O parlamento é uma casa plural, composta por vários membros, diferente do poder executivo, diferente de outros poderes, mas a beleza do parlamento é justamente essa, representa o povo. E a gente tem esse desafio de levar inovação para essas casas legislativas, e a gente precisa continuar assumindo esse compromisso de não desistir e avançar cada vez mais em levar a modernização para o parlamento, que, em última análise, faz com que a gente, como cidadão, sejamos os próprios beneficiados com leis que atendam melhor aos anseios de cada cidadão, né, em seus respectivos países, estados e municípios. Então, Luiz, gratidão pela oportunidade de compartilhar com vocês experiências e também, da mesma forma, receber e conhecer pessoas tão brilhantes de outros parlamentos, de outras nações, que fazem com que a gente cresça cada vez mais profissionalmente.